Welcome. We're excited to review the book today, aren't we?
You're in charge, apparently. You should
excited.
Just keep going.
I'm excited. We read a book for our online book club, and then there were some correlations that we drew between another book that we read, and we're going to kind of do a comparison of the two.
Which we have not done.
We have not done.
This is like a book throwdown.
It is a book throwdown. So the first book we read was Simon Sort of Says by Emily Bow, B-O-W. The book was The Labors of Hercules Beal by Gary D. Schmidt. And after he read both of them really close together, I had to do a really quick reread of Hercules Beal so that I could remember it all. And here we are today.
And it was very compelling because these stories have so many parallels. These were just so close. They're both young, early teenage years protagonists, middle school.
Middle grade readers.
Yeah, middle grade readers.
Yep.
So middle school protagonists, both young boys that went through traumatic events.
Yep.
Both found themselves in a relatively small town dealing with their recent tragedies. They both end up with female sidekicks in one flavor or another.
Yes.
Yep. And yeah, it's just such an interesting and yet very, very different.
Very
so they
different
have
books. Yeah.
All these similarities in plot, yet they're very different. We decided we're doing spoilers or no spoilers.
I don't know how to do a book review without giving spoilers. So,
well,
spoilers. We're just
spoilers. It is.
I just feel like there's no way that you can go into the things without giving away major plot points.
Maybe we're more interesting for it.
Yep.
Maybe we'll get extra hate mail for it.
Maybe we will.
Hard to say. Our homework is to learn how to do that. So I said a lot of the things that were the same.
Yep.
What were some differences you noticed?
Both of them are approaching the aftermath of tragedy. Simon Sort of Says approaches it, I guess you would say, from a very therapy-based approach to healing. In Hercules Beal, therapy wasn't even a word uttered in the entire book. And it was just the people around him helping him learn to find the strength within himself. So it was two different approaches to dealing with tragedy. And one was very modern, I guess a modern take on doing that, and one was not.
In my mind, I was thinking how I would describe those, and I wondered if you would say that the therapy-based approach is a more modern approach. And then you did. You used the word that was in my mind.
Yes. Because therapy, as we know it today, has been developed within the last 60 years, I would say. 60 to 70 years. Otherwise, it was just therapy was, I don't know, whatever.
I don't know where that was going.
Talking to your friends while you were washing your clothes down at the local river. That was therapy. Whereas today, we've got to go sit in our white sterile room and lament all of our problems and then have our therapist affirm that, yes, we're correct, and then we walk out of the room.
Well, this was a fun recap of therapy.
I know you wanted my assessment on therapy.
I did. That was entertaining.
Yeah.
I probably would have described some of it differently. The point I was going to make is that in the last few years, I think that's what's dangerous about talking about therapy, is therapy has grown and changed and has become a bigger thing and a much more common thing. Right. And it's hard to talk about it today and have an apples to apples discussion because everybody seems to view it differently, have different approaches, different experiences, different expectations about what that means.
Right.
So it would be a challenge to try to talk about it without using the word therapy.
I don't think that you can dodge that with Simon Sort of Says. So, spoiler, the tragedy in Simon Sort of Says is that he is the sole survivor of a school shooting. And they end up essentially running away from everybody they knew and the world they knew so they could go somewhere where nobody knows who he is because they can't find out that he is the sole survivor of this because we have to protect him. It's this idea of protect. And you can talk about that poor little town that really doesn't exist.
Well, okay, before I even go there, I'm holding back.
Should we just say outright that we did not like Simon Sort of Says?
Not this early. We should say that later.
Okay, we should say that later.
Here's the thing, is he is defined by his trauma.
Yes.
He needs all of this external help and talking. His whole life is focused on this bad experience he had, such that his family relocates. They change everything about their lifestyle. He can't handle people being supportive if it doesn't exactly match up his expectations of their support.
Yep.
And so it's a very inward focus, like he's focusing all on himself.
Yeah.
And anyone else's attempt, even with a positive attempt to support him, he's railing against and can't handle. And for some strange reason, his parents also can't handle it.
Well, and that was evident in all of his interactions with Agate and with Kevin and his parents, which were his friends. Everything around it was about him turning inward and how we can help him inwardly. Whereas in Hercules, it was all about how he needs to look outside himself and what's happening around him. And so it's just a different viewpoint of it's all about me and it's all about my trauma versus outward.
And to pull back in the idea of modern, the word therapy may not be the right word, but the modern viewpoint is a selfish, it is all about me viewpoint. Yep. And I'm going to rehash the bad things that happen over and over.
And over again.
And in both books, both characters have to deal with the stuff that happened.
Yes, absolutely.
But Simon Says, sort of says, I don't know why, I don't understand the title either. He has defined his whole self based on that event and can do nothing else.
Yeah.
And the book is, his progression as a character is getting to a place where he can take action again, but the action he takes is still based around his trauma.
Yes.
His action he takes is, okay, finally I can actually face a reporter and communicate like a human being. That talking more about his trauma seems like not useful.
Yeah.
So my question, we've labeled that modern.
Yes.
What is the non-modern approach? And would you then say it's the old school approach? Or is it just a different approach? And what is the different approach?
I would say that it's the old school approach of you've got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and your whole life can't be defined by this. You've got to move on from it. And for Hercules, his trauma, his tragedy is that both of his parents were killed in a car crash and he's living with his older brother Achilles. They are figuring out life. Both of them in their own ways are trying to figure out how they're going to handle his parents passing. And you have Hercules who gets this really strong male role model in Colonel Humpher.
Lieutenant Colonel
Humpher, who is like this old school military, like he lays it down for those kids and he's like, I had to do this and this and this and this. And he's telling him all of these really hard things that he had to do. And I think that male character and role model for Hercules was pivotal in him being able to see that other people have gone through really, really hard things. And so I can go through really, really hard things and we're all going to come out okay. And so Hercules had that example. Simon only had himself and his therapist. Nobody else was telling him, other people have gone through really hard things. You're going to be fine. Instead, it was, here's this therapy dog.
Well, okay. But Simon did have other people. His parents were there. But that's what I'm going to say is his parents were essentially useless. They weren't helping him get over it. They were helping him affirm his problems.
Right.
And affirm his victimhood. Now, he was a victim.
Absolutely, he was a victim.
Someone might be saying, hey, wait a minute. You're equating these two types of trauma, but seeing your friend shot in school is different than losing your parents in a car wreck. You could have taken either one the same direction.
Yes.
You could have had Hercules unable to move forward with his life day after day, traumatized by his missing parents and unable to function. Yep. And so you brought up Lieutenant Colonel Humpher and
yes.
And his approach from military voice, concern to be brought to him. And he said, you think I care about your problems? I do not.
Yes, he did. That's what he said.
He does not care. Did he actually not care?
No. He cared so much. He gave him this assignment of conquering all of labors. It is the Labors of Hercules Beal. Conquering all the labors of the mythical Hercules. He had to find ways to adapt that to his own life and go through all 12 labors. Every single one of those labors made Hercules look outside himself. It made him see other people and other people's problems, and he had to problem solve, but then at the end, he had these reflections he had to do, and he had to apply them to himself. and then he was able to walk through the tragedy and come out the other end. It's a beautiful book.
And taking action is the core.
Yes.
And
not sitting and wallowing in it.
And one of the really tough things about the Simon book, so I'm just going to call it Simon book.
Yes,
I don't
Simon
know if he says it or he sort of says it. I don't know. Simon's dad is essentially a weak character. Again, you have modern versus old school or old-fashioned. The strong male role model versus the weak dad. Low on skills, low on proactivity, doesn't seem to be the main provider for the family.
Nope.
And I'm not saying any of those things are right or wrong, but the whole package is 180 degrees. And that's why these two books are so interesting to read close to each other.
Well, you could say almost every adult character in Simon was a non-entity. They all were horribly flawed. They couldn't do anything right. All of their kids were like the victims of their parents' choices and the values they were trying to instill in them. And in Hercules, you had the opposite. You had adults that were trying to lead and guide and help this 12-year-old that needed all of the help that he could get, and you had all these adults rallying around him, which is what you're supposed to have. You're not supposed to have these idiot adults bumbling around, not able to help their child. You're making me like this book even less as we sit here talking about it.
And sometimes in Hercules, the adults were helping in, like, unless you were paying attention, you didn't see it. Somehow, magically, him and his older brother are running the family store.
Yes.
That's a little bit of a stretch, but you know, it's a middle grade reader, so don't dwell on that.
Don't think about it too much.
Yeah, but you see that all the townspeople coming in and, you know, being customers and obviously supporting them, and they never make it an issue, but they're being supported where they're working already to support themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a very positive, forward-looking kind of thing.
I have a question for you.
Oh.
So
Do it.
These are both middle grade readers, right?
Okay.
Why should it matter to us so much that Simon sort of says is one way and Hercules Beal is the other way? And like, we have really strong opinions about this middle grade reader book. I wouldn't have suggested it to my kids when they were little, but I would suggest Hercules Beal.
Okay, I have two. Can I give two answers?
Yeah.
One is well-written books for any age hit you emotionally and get you involved.
Yes.
A good book gets you involved, and we're readers.
Yep.
I feel like I could pick up any level of book. I could even go younger than this. We love Junie B. Jones when our kids are little.
We love Junie B. Jones.
We love her. Anyway, a well-written book that speaks to the right audience, creates a character you care about, I think will always get interest. For this one specifically, I do think that there is always latent education that happens through reading. And my experience, I was a big reader all through elementary school and through high school, did well academically, and I credit a lot of my leisure reading to those outcomes. And I've seen that in my own kids. The kids that read more and read sooner, kind of regardless of what it is, do better, and they pick up education, how the world works, values, scientific facts. You know, they believe what they read. So that's really important.
What you read influences you.
Yeah, I feel like, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, as an old guy opinion, but it feels like in the last 10 years, there has been this wider array of content. Now, you can talk about the benefits of diversity in content, maybe.
Yep.
The problem is, are the kids going to read a broad spectrum of things to get that diverse kind of viewpoint you want? No. Or are they really going to pick one and go down this lane?
Yep.
And if that's the case, and I think that's more likely, then you really want to start helping to guide them towards the most useful lanes. Heavens forbid, if I were responsible for a young person at this age, good thing, my kids all survived.
Yes, they're all grown.
So, but if I still was responsible for that, and then I thought about something traumatic might happen to this child, I want them to have positive role models or scripts to go back to. I wouldn't want them anywhere near the Simon
sort of says
view of life.
Yeah.
I did not, on purpose, I did not look up anything about either author. And so I'm now going to say something really risky. I think that the authors, through what they have written, through their work, I think I can see a different viewpoint and a different view of the world, and one I agree with and one I very much don't agree with.
I was going to say something somewhat similar in that we, especially our kids, are really influenced by what they read. I know our kids would read books and they would internalize it. I want my kids to come away feeling empowered, like they can conquer something. And Simon Sort of Says does not give that. Hercules, you are cheering for him and you want him to be able to conquer all of those labors that he's going after. And it's just a much better moral standing, I feel like.
Again, I agree with that. I want to add the Hercules book, and maybe it's just better written. I don't know. We were cheering him on. We were also crying with him.
Yeah, we were. Oh my gosh. He would go out every morning with his dog Mindy to the ocean, and he would watch the sunrise, and he would say, "Good morning, Mom and Dad." And it was heartbreaking every single time. You knew that he was walking out there because it's going to make me cry, that he was walking out there because he wanted to be with his mom and dad. And you were, you were crying with him the whole time.
Multiple times. There's a lot of emotion in that book and you feel it, and maybe it's just better written. I did not have the same reactions in Simon. I think that part of it is the way it's portrayed, and you're cheering for him at a level where Simon seems to just be wallowing. And doing stupid stuff.
Yeah.
In Simon, the whole town finally finds out about his traumatic experience and tries to support him by posting ribbons and flowers and teddy bears and whatever. And it's a bunch of well-intentioned people doing the best they can to support somebody. And all it is a big traumatic experience, and how dare they, and they're bad people. And it made no sense. His parents supported that viewpoint. Nothing about that was positive or made any sense whatsoever. So you don't really emotionally cheer for people who are making no sense.
And continually wallowing in their victimhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not appealing.
No.
And not useful. There's also nothing I would say, hey, I could take a lesson from this and it would improve my life.
No.
Nah.
No.
Boy, we have uncovered our opinions now. Yeah, this was a book of how not to view your life.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree.
Do I get to talk about my big issue now?
Yes, you can. This is the blaring thing that he came in 30 minutes.
30 minutes into this book.
30 minutes into this book. He was like, what? And
I was like, this is the dumbest book ever. Now, yes. I said that early on without all the background and whatever. Obviously, this was not a big win for me. The idea, the whole idea is here that they move to a small town that does not have access to the internet because they're in this no radio signal zone due to some scientific stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's just the dumbest thing ever. The internet does not rely on radio communications. We commonly use Wi-Fi and cell signals for stuff, but that's totally optional. All of our communications ends up on a wire, if not within a few hundred feet of your wireless device, within a mile or two. Like cell towers are connected. There's some situations where it's wireless backhaul or they're getting to satellite or whatever. Those are very rare.
Yes.
Especially in a small town situation. And to have this premise that there is no internet access in town.
At all whatsoever.
At all.
Yeah.
Because it was just the dumbest thing ever. And I came in, I'm like, what the heck? That's another reason I didn't look up this author, because I'm already disappointed. Did she not do any homework at all? Did she never take a science class? Does she not hook up her own modem in her home? I don't know how she, like...
I did look up...
Drives me bananas.
The Quiet Zone. It does exist in West Virginia along the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there's this little tiny town there that there's like 140 people who live there, and they do not have Wi-Fi. They don't have Wi-Fi or cell phone service. They still have fiber optics, so they still have access to the internet. They have a library website. They have a town website. Like, there's obviously access to the internet. So this world that she created was just totally false.
And back to my thing about education. So, you know, if you put aside all of our moral stance and that other opinion, yeah, you're also teaching kids falsehoods about how the internet works. I'm a little type A about that.
Okay, can we end on a good note?
Please?
I want you to say, so Hercules has to go through all of the labors.
Okay.
What was your favorite labor?
You asked me this before. I didn't know then. How am I going to know now? I don't have
you don't
one.
Have one?
Not really. When they started this idea of the labors, it was a little bit fuzzy. It's like, how's he going to pull this off? Mm-hmm. And for one of the first ones, there's an abandoned house full of cats.
Yes.
And him and his friends in a somewhat comical scene go and try to rid the house of these cats. Again, it's kind of funny and
then he gets
whatever.
the pirate cat as a pet for the rest of the book.
He strangely gains a pet. Not my favorite part either. I'm not sure what happened there really, but that's an example of the Labors. They were entertaining. The Labors gave a framework for the book to move forward.
Yeah.
It was really a book about taking action.
Yeah.
And that's what made it different and well written. You cared about the characters. Yep. It was emotional. The action kept moving. There was some nonsense in both books, but it's a middle reader, so I'm okay with that. Just don't lie about how the internet works.
My favorite labor was an art teacher, that he sacrifices his own money to help her get back one of her pieces. And it just was a moment where he was thinking about somebody else entirely the whole time. I just love that moment. So Gary D. Schmidt, he is a favorite. That's how I want to end this.
Number of stars.
Well, before you brought up all of the really crappy things about Simon Sort of Says, and I drew the correlation to Hercules, I gave it 3 stars, but now I would probably drop it down to 2. But Hercules is a 5.
And
5-star
Hercules
read.
is 5.
Yep.
Hercules is also a 5. The Labors of Hercules Beal. We should use the whole title.
Yes,
so
The Labors of Hercules
Beal. You can find
Beal.
it. I'd give that 5 stars. Great read. Simon Sort of Says. I'm going to be generous and give it 1 star. If I could take that star away and...
You have to give it 1 star for effort.
If I could take that star away and beat a therapist with it, I would.
Okay. There you go. That's our assessment. Oh, happy reading, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
Yep.